Okay, hello again, and today we're going to be talking about Oedipus Rex by Sophocles. If you look at the year Sophocles was alive, it was what is called the 5th century BC. Okay, so that was, I guess about 24 to 2500 years ago. Okay, so this is a very, very old play. The Greeks invented drama as we understand it. Before them, before Sophocles and a few of his people writing at the same time, a person named Aeschylus and Euripides, though you don't need to know that, they pretty much invented drama as we understand it, where you have characters speaking to each other and weighing ideas and developing together, acting as a plot. Just a century before the 5th century BC, there was nothing like this. The closest that happened was that there was an actor whose name is Thespis, who invented stepping away from the chorus and singing to the chorus, and the chorus singing back to him. And he's considered to be the very first actor. And so that's why another word for actor is thespian, because of Thespis. Just a note on the chorus, too. All Greek drama, in this case a tragedy, has a chorus. Okay, the chorus was so when you read this play, you read some words of the chorus. The chorus really sort of had a thematic role, but also a practical role. These plays, Oedipus Rex was only acted by 3 people. We have several parts, but there are only 3 actors, all males. And so obviously, we have more than 3 characters, and so what happens is the actor goes and quickly changes a mask or a costume or something to suggest now he is a new person, and he comes back on the stage. And actually, it wasn't a stage, as you and I understand. It was more sort of a ring that he would come out to. And so there needed to be some sort of a buffer while actors are going back and changing, and maybe changing into completely different characters, and maybe 3 actors at the same time need to go change. Something had to be happening on stage. And so that was sort of the practical role of the chorus, to sing songs. But it also had a thematic role, the chorus. And the chorus could be anywhere from 50 men, it could be 50 boys, or it could be a combination of men and boys singing in the chorus. The thematic role is to make sure the audience is getting it, is understanding what are the issues involved here. Okay, and how should we be feeling? When the chorus says, "I'm afraid, this scares me, I don't know what's going to happen," that's telling the audience, sort of the chorus acts as a surrogate audience in this way. It's sort of telling the audience, this is where you should be. Okay, this is how you should be feeling. These are the emotions you should be feeling at this time. Okay. So when we hear the chorus today, would be very strange. It would sound like ritual chanting in the middle of a play, or ritual sort of singing in the middle of a play. But they were absolutely required in Greek drama. A couple of other things to point out is that this is the plot of this play is what we would say is in real time. Okay, meaning that the plot of this play doesn't take place over several days. Okay, if this play takes about 2.5 hours to 3 hours to perform, I've seen it a couple times, it's about right, 2.5 to 3 hours to perform, then that's what we're watching in real time, the last 3 hours of Oedipus's happy life, before he asked to be exiled, which is where the play mostly ends. Okay, another point to make is that if you know anything about Oedipus at all, and Oedipus Rex simply means the king. His last name wasn't Rex. His name is Oedipus. Okay, Oedipus Rex is Oedipus the king. If you know anything about him, you probably know, maybe from reading psychology, some Freud, the Oedipus complex. Okay, but if you know anything about Oedipus, it's that he is a person who killed his father and then married and had children with his mother, not knowing that. Totally unaware that that's what he has done. Okay, and so therefore he is sort of the person that Greeks could point to. You think your life is bad. At least it's not as bad as Oedipus. Oedipus was on top of the world, and 3 hours later, he has blinded himself and he is asking to be exiled. Okay, So he is that guy that you point to and say, this person has it worse than anybody else, maybe in the history of the world, is what was considered Oedipus Rex. What happened to him was about as bad as anything that could happen. And it doesn't matter that he had no idea he was doing it. The Greeks didn't have the same concept of sin. When you and I sin, we commit a sin. Generally speaking, we know we're doing something wrong and we're choosing to do something wrong. The Greeks didn't have that idea. The Greeks' idea was guilt. It doesn't matter whether you knew it was your father or not. Did you kill your father? Oop, yep, you did. Okay, and did you have children by your mother and marry your mother? Oop, you did. Okay, well, you're guilty. You did those things. Those things happened. And it doesn't matter whether you knew it or not. In that sort of Greek mindset, you are guilty. So if you were in ancient Greece going to see Sophocles' latest play called Oedipus Rex, just know that you would already know the story. In the same way that if I said, tell me a little bit about Santa Claus, where does he live? What's his thing? What does he do? Okay, you'd be able to tell me, well, he lives in the North Pole and he dresses in a red suit and he says ho, 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 and he flies all over the world giving presents to children on Christmas, right? You know the basic story. The same is true if you went into Sophocles' play, Oedipus Rex. You would know the whole story ahead of time. And so what you'd be going to see the play for is, okay, what is Sophocles going to do with this old story that everybody already knows? We start the play with a plague. He is the king of Thebes. And the way he became the king of Thebes is by solving the riddle of the Sphinx. So this is before the play starts, okay? And you would know this too, that there was this monster that came to Thebes and was destroying, killing everyone. And the only way to make it go away would be to solve the riddle. It had this riddle, and it was, and maybe you've heard it before, it's what walks on 4 legs in the morning, 2 legs in the afternoon, and 3 legs at night. And the idea is that, well, it's a human being, right? Crawling as a baby, walking as an adult or child or adult. And then, of course, 3 legs would mean with a cane, okay, later in your life. That was the riddle of the Sphinx, and he solved it. And he destroyed the Sphinx that way. And people said, well, he seems like a kind of a decent kind of guy. Let's make him our king because our previous king was killed and nobody knows by whom. Okay, years and years have passed. Okay, maybe even a couple of decades, because Oedipus and his wife Jocasta, also his mother, but his wife Jocasta, I know it's spelt with an I, but it's pronounced Jocasta, as if it's with a J. Years and years have passed, and there's a plague going through Thebes. And Oedipus is the great riddle solver, and so the people of Thebes come to him and beg him, hey, can you find out why this plague is killing us all? What can be done about it? And he says, listen, you each are just suffering solely. I am, as your king, I am suffering more than all of you because, you're responsible only for your own lives. I'm responsible for all these lives. And what he tells him is, I've sent my brother-in-law, also his uncle, his brother-in-law Creon. We're going to consult the oracle at Delphi to find out what's causing the plague. Okay, so, I'm on it. Don't worry about it. Creon comes back and has consulted the oracle and has learned that the reason why there is a plague going on is because they never found out who killed the former king, Laius. And the killer is living among Thebans. He's living among them all. Okay, and so Oedipus says, well, now you got me to fight for you. This is my thing. I'm a riddle solver. He cannot not solve riddles. And so he's going to solve this riddle. And so if we turn to page 201, his way of solving the riddle is to say, well, we'll read it from the top there, 201. As one who became a citizen after the murder, so I wasn't here when it happened, I make this proclamation to all Thebans. If any man knows by whose hand Laius, son of Labdacus, met his death, I direct that man to tell me everything, no matter what he fears for having so long withheld it. Let it stand as promised that no further trouble will come to him, but he may leave the land in safety. Okay, so he's saying, I'm going to solve the riddle, and the first thing he did was he says, does anybody know who this person is? Moreover, if anyone knows the murderer to be foreign, let him not keep silent. He shall have his reward from me. However, if he does conceal it, if any man, fearing for his friend or for himself, disobeys this edict, hear what I propose to do. I solemnly forbid the people of this country, where power and throne are mine, ever to receive that man or speak to him, no matter who he is, or let him join in sacrifice, lustration, or in prayer. I decree that he be driven from every house, being as he is, corruption itself to us. The Delphic voice of Zeus has pronounced this revelation. Thus I associate myself with the oracle and take the side of the murdered king. Okay? And so essentially what he has just done is sentenced himself. He just doesn't know it yet. Okay? As for the criminal, I pray to God, whether it be a lurking thief or one of a number, I pray that the man's life be consumed in evil and wretchedness. And as for me, this curse applies no less if it should turn out that the culprit is my guest here, sharing my hearth. And so he's just condemned, he's cursed himself. And so, of course, now if you were sitting next to me, we were a couple of ancient Greeks sitting in the theater, sitting in the round, in the arena there, and I would be poking you in the ribs, and I'd say, yeah, you see what he's doing there? See what he's doing? He's cursing himself, he just doesn't know it. That's what we call irony. Okay, what he thinks he's accomplishing, but what he's really accomplishing are two very different things. This is what's called dramatic irony. Skip down to the final stanza of that page. Now I, having the power that he held before me, having his bed, begetting children there upon his wife, as he would have had he lived, their son would have been my children's brother. Okay, so their son would have been my children's brother, and of course he is their son, and so he has two sons of his own, who are both his sons and arguably his brothers, right? Okay, and so all of these things, again, it's everybody in the audience knows, but nobody on stage knows, and that includes the chorus, okay? But there is a person who does know, and they said, okay, well, nobody's coming forward. Why don't we ask Tiresias? Tiresias is the blind soothsayer. In other words, he can see the future. He knows things that other people don't know. Okay, he has like magical powers of knowledge, but he's blind. Okay, and of course, the irony is he's blind, but he sees what's happening here. He knows why the plague is happening. He knows who the murderer is. And Oedipus can see, but he's blind to who he is. If we move to page 205, and the last stanza there, it's Tiresias, the blind prophet, saying, this is, you're making fun of me for being blind, because Tiresias, when Tiresias comes, he says, I'm not going to tell you anything. I wish, if I knew, what it is you would want to ask me, because I never would have come. Okay. And Oedipus is confused by this. What's going on? Why don't you tell me what I ask you? And Tiresias knows the truth, but doesn't want to be the one to say the truth. But Oedipus kind of makes him mad. And so Tiresias says on page 205, listen to me, you mock my blindness, do you? But I say that you, with both your eyes, are blind. You cannot see the wretchedness of your life, nor in whose house you live. No, nor with whom. Who are your father and mother? Can you tell me? You do not even know the blind wrongs that you have done them on earth and in the world below. For the double lash of your parents' curse will whip you out of this land someday with only night upon your precious eyes. In other words, you're going to be blind too. And of course, by the end of the play, Oedipus has blinded himself. Well, Oedipus certainly doesn't like hearing that he is the problem, that he is the curse that he's looking for. And he blames Creon. He's saying, you know what? Creon put Tiresias up to this, wants to make me look bad. Creon wants to be the king himself. So he confronts Creon and says, I know what you're up to. And Creon says, no, the fact is why would I want to be king when it's so much better to be the brother-in-law of the king? You have all the responsibility, all the problems, and everybody comes and kisses up to me when they want something from you. And so I have a much better job being the brother-in-law of the king. But he doesn't believe it, and he's making a big fuss about it. So Jocasta comes out and says, what's all the problem going on? And Oedipus says, well, your brother is trying to cause me trouble. And he mentions the soothsayers. And Jocasta says, set your mind at rest. If it is a question of soothsayers, those are like fortune tellers, I tell you that you'll find no man whose craft gives knowledge of the unknowable. Here's my proof. So she's going to pull a random example out of her head that says, see, oracles don't know what they're talking about. Here's her example she pulls out. An oracle was reported to Laius once. Okay, that's her former husband, the former king, Oedipus's father. I will not say from Phoebus himself, but from his appointed ministers at any rate, that his doom would be death at the hands of his own son, his son born of his flesh and of mine. Now you remember the story. Laius was killed by marauding strangers, where 3 highways meet. But his child had not been 3 days in this world before the king had pierced the baby's ankles and left him to die on a lonely mountainside. Okay, so the king said, oh, no son of mine's going to grow up and kill me. So he left the baby to die. Okay, he gave the baby to a household servant who went off and lived as a shepherd. Okay? Thus Apollo never caused that child to kill his father, and it was not Laius' fate to die at the hands of his son, as he had feared. This is what prophets and prophecies are worth. Have no dread of them. It is God himself who can show us what he wills in his own way. Okay, so don't listen to these soothsayers. The gods or God is going to tell us, in their own time what's going to happen. Oedipus is a little bit weirded out by what she just said, because he says, how strange a shadowy memory crossed my mind just now while you were speaking. It chilled my heart. And she says, what do you mean? What memory do you speak of? If I understand you, Laius was killed at a place where 3 roads meet. So it was said. We have no later story. Where did it happen? Phocis, it is called, a place where the Theban way divides into the roads towards Delphi and Dalia. When? We had the news not long before you came and proved the right to your succession here. Okay, so he's saying, oh my God, maybe I am the one who killed the king, because I remember coming along and being hassled and roughed up by this group of travelers, and so I kind of killed them all, right? Except for one. So now he's freaking out a little bit here, because he knows that something like that sounds very similar to what he's done. She says, Oedipus, why does this trouble you? Do not ask me yet. First tell me how Laius looked, and tell me how old he was. He was tall, his hair just touched with white. His form was not unlike your own. Hey, coincidence. Never really thought about it, but you kind of look like him, or he kind of looked like you. I think that I myself may be accursed by my own ignorant edict. So he realizes now, oh my God, I may be the one who killed the king. Now, bear in mind what hasn't occurred to him yet. Not only did you kill the king, but that king was your father, which makes Jocasta your mother. That's not even on the radar. That doesn't even occur to him. But right now he's saying, oh my God, I think I may have cursed myself, because I know that something very similar happened to me about the same time you're talking about, where 3 roads meet. However, there's one thing that she says that makes him feel a little bit better about it. And that is, the story that came was that it was a group of marauders, not one man. And Oedipus knew he was one man who committed the slaughter. It wasn't a group of marauders, okay? And then, well, where did the story come from? It came from the sole survivor of that massacre, who, strangely enough, when he saw that you had become king, asked to leave the palace, didn't want to be a servant in the palace anymore, and left and went on to become a shepherd. So they decide, hey, let's go find this guy and get the story from him. Was it one person? Was it several people? Was it me? Okay, and so they go off to get the shepherd. Meantime, somebody shows up from what Oedipus thought was his hometown. Because Oedipus is the prince of the king and queen of Corinth. And he's always assumed that they were his parents. But first, before we get there, you know what? Let's look at page 216. And he tells the story. There were 3 highways at the top there, coming together at a place I passed. And there was a herald comes towards me, and a chariot drawn by horses with a man such as you described seated in it. The groom leading the horses forced me off the road at his lord's command. But as his charioteer lurched over towards me, I struck him in my rage. The old man saw me, brought his double goad down upon my head as I came abreast. He was paid back and more. Swinging my club in his right hand, I knocked him out of his car, and he rolled on the grounds. I killed him. I killed them all. Now, if that stranger and Laos were kin, where is a man more miserable than I? And that's sort of really the point, right? That he is the most miserable man who has ever lived. He's the person who fell from the highest highs to the lowest of lows. More hated by the gods, citizen and alien alike must never shelter me or speak to me. I must be shunned by all, and I myself pronounce this malediction upon myself. Think of it. I have touched you with these hands that killed your husband. What defilement! Am I all evil then? It must be so, since I must flee from Thebes, yet never again see my own countrymen, my own country, nor fear of joining my mother in marriage and killing Polybus, my father. Ah, if I was created so, born to this fate, who would deny the savagery of God? Okay, and so the sort of recognition, he says, oh, I really think that, I'm the one who did it. It sounds a whole lot like it. But they're going to get the shepherd and ask him. Okay, so moving on to page 219, and as I said earlier, so while they're waiting for the shepherd to show up, who should show up but a messenger? And he's a messenger from Corinth. Oedipus always believed that he was the natural son of the king and queen of Corinth. Not Thebes, but Corinth. And a messenger shows up from Corinth he says, I got some bad news and I got some good news. Okay, so the bad news is your father, King Polybus, is dead. The good news is that the people of Corinth want you to be their king. Well, Oedipus is overjoyed, not so much that he's asked to be king, but he's overjoyed that his father has died. Now, why would Oedipus be happy? Well, because while he was living in Corinth, at some party, revelry, a drunken person said, you know what, your parents are not who you think they are. Your parents aren't really your parents. And he confronted his parents saying, hey, am I really your son? And they said, oh, yeah, of course. But he wasn't quite sure. So he himself went to the oracle and asked. And the oracle told him, yeah, you're going to kill your father and sleep with your mother. So Oedipus can never go home because he's afraid I might accidentally kill my father. I don't know how I'm going to accidentally sleep with my mother. I don't know how that happens. But I don't want to accidentally kill my father. So when the messenger shows up and says, hey, your father is dead, Oedipus thinks that he's sort of relieved from that particular curse because he knows that he didn't kill his father. And again, he has no notion whatsoever that Laos is his real father and that Jocasta is his mother. At this point, he's only fearing that he is guilty of killing the former king, and he's already cursed that person. That person must be driven from sight. Okay. So the messenger, perhaps surprised at Oedipus, is kind of happy, strangely happy, that his father's dead, because Oedipus is glad, well, it wasn't by my hand. Okay. That the messenger lets drop one more thing. And this is one of those moments where, sometimes you just got to know when to shut up. Right? But the messenger says, hey, well, you think that's good news? I got even better news. He wasn't even your real father. And Oedipus is saying, what? Yeah, he wasn't really your father. I know, because I'm the one who brought you to them. What? Yeah, there was a shepherd who was up in the mountains who took pity on you, didn't want you to be killed, handed you to me, and I took you, and you became the prince. To the king and queen of Corinth. You became their son. So that means the curse is back on, right? Oedipus says, oh, who's this shepherd who brought you this baby? Does anybody know? And I think one of the chorus members, or Corregos perhaps, says, yeah, I think that's the same shepherd you're looking for, who you're going to ask about where the three roads met. The witness to the massacre, the sole survivor who decided to quit being a servant at the palace when he happened to notice that you were king. That same guy is the one who brought the baby and handed him to me. Well, where did the baby come from for the shepherd to have? Okay, so let's look at that moment. On page 222, Oedipus says, right about halfway down the page there, does anyone here know this shepherd that he's talking about? Have you seen him in the fields or in the town? If you have, tell me. It's time things were made plain. I think the man he meant is that same shepherd you have already asked to see. Jocasta perhaps could tell you something. Do you know anything about him, lady? Is he the man we have summoned? Is that the man the shepherd means? Somewhere along the line here, I know Oedipus is the great riddle solver. Jocasta is the first one to get it. And by this moment, she's got it. She's figured it out. And she says, why think of him? Forget this herdsman. Forget it all. This talk is a waste of time. She wants to shut it down, right? But you can't shut it down. They've already come too far. And who are we talking about here? We're talking about Oedipus. He cannot not solve a riddle. So she's trying to clamp it down. Oh, please, let's drop the subject. How can you say that when the clues to my true birth are in my hands? For God's love, let us have no more questioning. Is your life nothing to you? My own is bane enough for me to bear. And Oedipus says, you need not worry. Suppose my mother a slave and born of slaves. No baseness can touch you. So he's misunderstanding her reaction. She's thinking, well, he was born of a slave, and so therefore I'm married to the son of a slave. She wouldn't like that. Okay, and so he's saying, well, that doesn't touch you. Listen to me, I beg you, do not do this thing. And he says, I will not listen. The truth must be made known. Everything that I say is for your own good. My own good snaps my patience then. I want none of it. And she says, you are fatally wrong. May you never learn who you are. Go one of you and bring the shepherd here. Let us leave this woman to brag of her royal name. Ah, miserable, that is the only word I have for you now. That is the only word I can ever have. And she exits into the palace where she knows the truth is going to come out. And she goes in and she hangs herself. Okay, we don't see her doing it. We hear about it subsequently. Okay, but she goes in and hangs herself at this moment. And Choregos is confused. Choregos is sort of the leader of the chorus. Why has she left us, Oedipus? Why has she gone in such a passion of sorrow? I fear this silence. Something dreadful may come of it. And he says, now bear in mind, he's the great riddle solver. And he's saying, oh, we're going to solve this riddle. We're going to get to the bottom of this. He has no clue. He may have killed the former king. Okay, he has no clue how much worse it's about to get. When he says, let it come. However base my birth, I must know about it. The queen, like a woman, is perhaps ashamed to think of my low origin. Okay, so she might be embarrassed to be married to the child of a slave. But then he says, but I am a child of luck. I cannot be dishonored. So again, if you're sitting next to me in the theater in ancient Greece, I'm poking you in the ribs. You're probably telling me, stop doing that. But I'm poking you in the ribs. See what he's doing there? He's saying, I cannot be dishonored. He has no idea. Luck is my mother. The passing months, my brothers, have seen me rich and poor. If this is so, how could I wish that I were someone else? I have had a great life. I've had such a good run. Why would I ever wish I were someone else? Oh, man. How could I not be glad to know my birth? Well, of course, you are going to be very unhappy when you get the final truth. So the shepherd shows up, and the shepherd doesn't want to answer. He now understands, I'm going to give this guy some really bad news, because he knows, the shepherd knows, that Oedipus killed the former king, because the shepherd is a witness to it. But he also knows where the baby came from, because he's the one who brought it to the messenger, right, years ago. On page 225, let's say around line 50, the shepherd says, for God's love, my king, do not ask me any more. You are a dead man if I have to ask you again. Then the child was from the palace of Laos, a slave child, or a child of his own line? Ah, I'm on the brink of dreadful speech, and I of dreadful hearing, yet I must hear. So he knows that, you're not going to like what you hear. And Oedipus is saying, yeah, I know, but I have to hear it. You must be told then, they said it was Laius' child. But as your wife, who can tell you about that? My wife? Did she give it to you? My lord, she did. Do you know why? I was told to get rid of it. An unspeakable mother. Okay, so it's kind of interesting, because he already knew that Jocasta got rid of the baby. He just didn't know it was he who was supposed to be killed. Okay, so maybe he's taking it extra personally now. An unspeakable mother. There had been prophecies. Tell me. It said that the boy would kill his own father. Then why did you give him over to this old man? I pitied the baby, my king, and I thought that this man would take him far away to his own country. He saved him, but for what a fate. Yeah, he saved the baby, but for what a fate. So that he could grow up to become Oedipus, that guy, the most miserable person, the person people point to and say, well, at least you're not that guy. For what a fate. For if you are what this man says you are, no living man is more wretched than Oedipus. That's it. He is the world's most wretched man at this moment. And Oedipus says, Ah, God, it was true. All the prophecies. Now, O light, may I look upon you for the last time. I, Oedipus, damned in his birth, in his marriage bed, in his marriage damned in the blood that he shed with his own hand. And he rushes into the palace. Well, we find out then subsequently that Oedipus goes in, sees Jocasta hanging there, grabs the brooches from her dress, and stabs out his own eyes because the truth, the light of truth, is too much for him to bear, and so he doesn't want to see the world anymore, and so he blinds himself, fulfilling Tiresias's prophecy that he would, by the end of this play, by not very long at all, he will be blind. Let's jump to the end. He asks, can I at least touch my daughters before? He asks to be exiled. And Creon, who is going to take over as king after all, says, let's consult the oracle. Let's not jump the gun here. And in the end, it's Coragus, and it's the representative of the chorus, who puts the final words to the play. Men of Thebes, look upon Oedipus. This is the king who solved the famous riddle and towered up, most powerful of men. No mortal eyes but looked on him with envy. Yet in the end, ruin swept over him. Let every man in mankind's frailty consider his last day, and let none presume on his good fortune until he find life at his death a memory without pain. And so part of what this is saying is, don't assume that the good times are going to continue. Okay? Don't assume that you've had a good life. Or don't point to somebody else and say, now that person's got a great life. Okay? Until you consider your last day. Okay? Let none presume on his good fortune. Oedipus had a heck of a run. Everything was going fine. He was made king. He was a stranger in a country where they made him king. He was on top of the world. And 3 hours later, he's blind and exiled. And if you were a Greek, an ancient Greek, leaving the theater after this and just marveling at what Sophocles did with this old story, and so this play survives 2,400 years later, one of the things you would probably be talking about is this idea of, well, are we fated, or do we have some free will? If we're fated, then this was going to happen to Oedipus no matter what. Okay, he was going to be that guy. He was born to be that guy. But let's look at it. What was sort of the prime mover in this? It was Laios wanting to know something that maybe he shouldn't know. And that is something about what the future holds. And so the oracle told him, your infant son is going to kill you and have children by your wife. Okay? Now, if Laius didn't know that, he almost certainly would not have sent Oedipus away, so that Oedipus could grow up far, far away, not knowing who his real mother and real father are. And so maybe by trying to know the future, you could say that Laios caused the future. In the same way, we could look at Oedipus. Oedipus consulted the oracle, who said, yes, you are going to kill your father and marry your mother. And at which point Oedipus says, well, I'm not going to be around Corinth to let that happen. And so he stayed away so that he happened to be where three roads meet so that he could kill his real father. Okay. And even at the end here, where Oedipus could have stopped, Jocasta said, let it go. You don't want to know. I hope you never find out who you really are. You were born to be this miserable. He could have let it go. But he's Oedipus. He can't let something like this go. He can't let a riddle go. And, it's probably would be impossible for any of us just to say, all right, I don't need to know. No, we want to know. We want to know. Even the ugliest of truths. He wants to know. He wants to know the truth about himself. And so, if we were kind of leaving the theater and walking along, we'd say, was this fated to happen, or did human agency play a role? And it's a difficult knot. This idea of fate, what the gods decide, and free will. How much are we free agents? And I think Sophocles does a really good job kind of balancing that sort of great riddle. Did Laios cause his own death by finding out that his son was going to kill him, and therefore he did everything he could, but ultimately put his son in a position to kill him? Or perhaps that would have happened anyway, just in a different way. But if Oedipus grew up knowing who his mother is, it seems unlikely he would have married her and had children with her. So do we, through our free will, cause our own doom? Or maybe this is fated, that Laios was fated to consult the oracle, and therefore he was fated to try to destroy his son, and therefore his son was fated to try to avoid being near who he thought to be his parents, and found himself where the three roads meet so that he can fulfill his fate. He had a really good run, but he was fated to be the most miserable man ever. Okay, that's it. Make sure that you take the quiz. All right, bye now.